AOD-9604 is your ticket to lasting weight loss. If you haven't heard of this peptide, then you need to stay tuned. We've been using it on thousands of patients and helping them achieve lasting weight loss. You might have heard right now, especially if you're probably already utilizing it yourself, semaglutide tirzepatide creates a great deal of muscle loss. But muscle mass loss is a thing that you have to be concerned about with any sort of weight loss program. AOD is a powerful solution for you to preserve that muscle mass, which is the ideal solution that you want when you lose weight, is you want to minimize muscle mass loss. We're going to get into all of that. Stay tuned. Okay, so what is AOD? AOD-9604 is actually a fragment of the human growth hormone. So you probably have heard of HGH, human growth hormone, the fountain of youth, right? I mean, this kind of stuff is what celebrities were getting, and it was always sort of an underground thing. It's very, very expensive, and there's a ton of amazing benefits of HGH and human growth hormone. Specifically, it'll help support muscle mass, protein synthesis, protect muscle mass when you're on a diet. It's going to aid in fat mobilization, making it easier to mobilize body fat. It is going to promote healing and regeneration in your joints, promotes better sleep and regeneration, even improves the immune system. So there's a lot of various things that growth hormone does. And we know from the literature that as we age, levels of growth hormone decrease. Now, just to give you context, we're talking about AOD, but I wanted to give you that context of human growth hormone. So human growth hormone is this large molecule, hundreds of various amino acids that make this up. And so there's a section of that molecule that causes the fat loss portion. And so they've isolated that and separated it into a product that we know as AOD-9604. Now, if you're getting this from a research company, which I hope you're not, then you might have heard the name HGH frag. Essentially, they're talking about the same thing, but I have a whole separate video where my opinions, I talk about getting your peptides from a research company, which, by the way, if you're wondering what that means, it means you didn't go through a clinic that required prescription from a doctor. You got it from a company with a simple click, no different than ordering freaking dog food on Amazon, if you order dog food on Amazon. And it says all over the website, not for human consumption, and as well as all over the bottle. So please be careful, guys, when you're out there, and avoid situations like that. So AOD is that fragment, specifically the fat mobilizing fragment, okay? And we really got to understand like what that means, okay? It's a fat mobilizer. It's not a fat burner. So let's break that down. What's the difference, okay? Because it's really easy to get confused when you think about fat mobilization and fat burning. So to me, fat burning means the actual stimulus that's causing the fat loss, that's causing the weight loss. Ideally, the weight loss is coming from fat, right? What we know that we need for that to happen is a caloric deficit at the end of the day. So most fat burners have usually focused on increasing your metabolism, right? Thermogenesis, stimulating you, some sort of stimulant, some sort of upper. That's how phentermine works. You guys remember ephedrine and all these crazy things. They would increase the amount of calories your body would burn at rest. You'd never heard too much about suppressing appetite until these GLP-1 medications, of course, semaglutide, tirzepatide. These powerful appetite suppressing medications are achieving the majority of the results in terms of really good weight loss, because people are eating significantly less because these medications are suppressing their appetite. So that's the end-all be-all stimulus for weight loss. But what happens with the weight loss is really important to discuss. What we know with general weight loss is that you're not going to lose all fat. Like, it's just not going to happen. You are going to lose a certain percentage of your body weight from muscle, right? Lean body mass. And so the goal should be, if you want to actually have a chance of sustaining your weight loss and improve your health as much as possible, is to maintain as much of that lean body mass as possible. Lean body mass is so important for not just sustaining your weight loss down the road, because muscle mass is more metabolically active tissue. You burn literally more calories at rest the more muscle mass that you have. But having more muscle mass means you are more insulin sensitive. That's kind of like the chicken and the egg thing. Does building muscle mass make you more insulin sensitive, or do you have to get more insulin sensitive to build more muscle mass? I was actually having a really cool discussion with one of my colleagues who I did a podcast with, and at the end of the day, that's to be determined. But we know there's more insulin sensitivity to be gained with more muscle mass, right? You're able to tolerate carbohydrates a lot better, which is kind of synonymous with saying more insulin sensitivity. And there's a really good study. You guys see this trend right here. They straight up correlated all-cause mortality with muscle mass. Literally, more muscle mass you have, the longer you will live. And this is a very, very powerful correlation. And it kind of makes sense when you think about all the various ways that the elderly may perish. So you fall down, whether you break your hip or not, probably one of the influencing factors is how much muscle mass that you have. So muscle mass is just, I can go on and on about the benefits of muscle mass. And right now we're hyper-focused on losing weight. And so, but we have to take it back to the difference between mobilizing and burning, right? So when you mobilize body fat, that's the first step towards burning, okay? So again, we're not talking about AOD. You're reducing calories, your body mobilizes body fat, and then you burn it. But when you can do something to aid in your mobilization, now what you're doing is producing a favorable response for your body so that when the weight loss comes, the stimulus, the burner, right, comes afterwards, now you are likely to be able to burn more body fat. And I wish we had huge studies done on this. We probably never will because the FDA, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but in my opinion, for what I see happens both from personal experience and working with so many patients, the weight loss becomes significantly more body fat, which is ultimately what we want for so many reasons. Okay, so let's get into the FDA. So the FDA, unfortunately, has continued to scrutinize peptide therapy, and they have generated a list of peptides that they think are concerning to them. And I've made separate videos about that. I'm not going to go too down the weeds with this one right now, but peptides are looking like they're going away. Some of them are already gone. And so we are on a winding trajectory, it looks like, although I've seen and heard rumblings of alternatives. And, when you follow me, I'm going to keep you guys updated to the latest and greatest, because really, I don't care what the peptide is, as long as it's safe and it helps us mobilize body fat, that is what matters most for the reasons that we're getting into in this video. Quick minute here. I wanted to tell you guys about the free resources that I have. There's a link in the show notes is going to give you a way to join the free Facebook community where we'll do weekly live coaching all about the weight loss medications, on them, without them, whatever it is, we're going to help you hit your goals. And there's a free PDF too as well, which breaks down the step-by-step so that you know exactly what to do and when to do it. And we'll see you back in the show. So let's talk about the different forms of AOD that you may come across. So I've seen nasal sprays, I've seen injections, I've seen oral troches. So when it comes to compounding pharmacies, which is hopefully the only source that you're dealing with to get your hands on these peptides, I've only seen injections and oral troches. So nasal sprays, I've only seen those from research companies, and you already know how I feel about that. So that's gone. I've tried those too, just out of the sake of curiosity, and I didn't notice an effect. So same thing with oral troches. But I finally have secured compounding pharmacies that can make high quality oral troches. And so that has become our main source and form of AOD. So the injections are subcutaneous injections that you inject into your body fat. And then the oral troches are not pills that you swallow, but an oral troche is a method of medication administration where it absorbs in your buccal mucosa, which is essentially all that circulation that you have there. You pop it in there and you let it dissolve. And a lot of it absorbs through the circulation that's right there. So it bypasses the GI tract. There's a lot of literature that talks about oral troche administration forms. So I just never had a company before this last year that I trusted that actually produces a high quality product. So for me personally, oral troche from a high quality source is the way to go. But if you're not going to deal with us, which is the only sources that I know that are high quality, and you're getting this on your own, you could say injections are the safer play. But then you got to deal with daily injections, which are really a pain in the butt. How fast does AOD work? God, that is it's one of those questions that I want to go, I don't know. Like seriously, it's so hard to answer that question, right? Because what the heck are you doing on the other side of that equation is ultimately that's going to determine this. Now, I've hopefully made it more clear now, because earlier we talked about fat mobilizing from fat burning weight loss, right? This is not going to speed up your metabolism. This is not going to suppress your appetite. So if you don't change anything, it's literally going to do nothing. There'll be no net effect. Now, I think there might be some improvement, because maybe the maintenance that you're achieving with your calories, maybe you'll have a better favorable response, but it'll be minuscule, because you need that calorie deficit. So ultimately, how fast it's going to work is going to be how aggressive you are with your calorie deficits and your weight training and all that other stuff. But assuming you got that dialed in, our patients, and I'll tell you guys now, the program that we use so successfully is the combination of AOD and tirzepatide. And, our whole thing, if you didn't know already, is helping patients be able to actually wean off the medications and peptides and maintain weight. So we don't want lifelong usage of these. And so, but we use both, and we coach lifestyle in. And so our patients are getting about 1% to 1.5% of body weight loss every single week. And I notice a big difference when they're not using AOD, okay? Because the GLP-1s like semaglutide or tirzepatide, they will reduce hunger. But AOD is mobilizing body fat. We utilize fasting, deep rounds of fasting that we call the FLOA protocol, fasting like our ancestors. And I have separate videos talking about that. But I think one of the keys to our successful program is getting our patients into those weekly long rounds of 36 to 48 hours of fasting. And if you think about it, like the roadblock to doing long fasting is the hunger and the everything else. Well, what is the everything else? The everything else is your body's inability to mobilize its fat stores and supply itself with energy during a 48-hour fast, right? That's the stressful part of long fasting, is you are asking your body to feed itself from its own fat stores when it's used to feeding itself from the food that you're continuously eating, right? That's a stressful situation, especially if you've never done it, right? So the body is not going to be able to do it the first time you do it very effectively, unless you happen to be some genetically bestowed, super metabolically fit person, but I've never seen that, right? Or you've been doing ketogenic diet for 6 months to a year. I come across those patients who find us, they're like, I've been doing keto for 6 to 9 months. Holy crap, it's really cool to see that, because they slip into my long fasting like that. And they're amazed, because now I can get them off of keto. Because I'll tell you, a lot of those people were always wondering, like, yeah, I've done it for 6 to 9 months, but am I really going to be able to do keto for the rest of my life? And, I don't think most people are going to be able to adhere to a keto diet for the rest of their life, which is why that doesn't work long term. But we can rely on the fasting, okay? So that metabolic flexibility is what we call the ability for your metabolism to mobilize its fat stores and feed itself to meet its energy demands. And fasting, especially for 48 hours, is a very high energy demanding situation, okay? So AOD is paramount, because without it, then you're dealing with low blood sugar issues. And this is where, even though the hunger is handled from the tirzepatide, lots of fasting will induce things like tiredness, crankiness, brain fog, all those kind of symptoms that you would expect that your body is, your brain, which wants a steady supply of glucose, is struggling to make it. And, that's the poor metabolic flexibility. So I like to call AOD artificially induced metabolic flexibility. How do we take AOD? There are so many ways that you could take AOD. And the truth of the matter is, like many peptides, we don't have enough data. So I can only share with you what I've seen work. The template recommendation would be 1 dose of AOD during our program in the morning. So you're fasted. We think that you should be fasted around about an hour before and 2 hours afterwards, because we know the effects of insulin and how it negates growth hormone. And even though this isn't growth hormone, this is a fragment, we don't know. And so the recommendations standardly say, keep it fasted, which you should be fasting every morning anyways. And if you don't agree with that, then you should be watching some of my other videos. But that's the template, right? And for us in our program, that helps with the metabolic flexibility as we rebuild the metabolism. And we talked about the mobilizing the fat. But if you're on a budget, taking it for just your fasting days would also be helpful, because that, out of the 7 days, is when you need the AOD the most, right? So you could do a serving of AOD on fasting days. That would be my lowest tier. You could do a serving every day. You could do a serving in the morning plus your fasting days, so twice a day on your fasting days. And then you could probably even go up to twice a day, 7 days a week. I would recommend 3 to 4 months, take a couple of weeks off and give yourself that break. And I take that approach towards all peptides as a whole. So what is the dosage. Well, if you're injecting, about 250 micrograms would be each dose that you would give yourself that we were referring to. And then if you're doing an oral troche, at least in my opinion, doubling that dose makes sense because we know the absorption rate from oral mucosa is not as good as a subcutaneous injection. So 500 micrograms for the oral troche, 250 micrograms for the injection. And now you have an idea of all the different layers and tiers of how aggressive you can be with this peptide to help you with your weight loss goals. So how do we store AOD? This is another reason why I'm not a fan of those injections. It is a very sensitive peptide, and all peptides, generally, you've seen the bottles, you got that white fluffy powder. We call that lyophilized powder, almost like freeze-dried stuff. And so you add the water to it, and we call that reconstitution. So now you have a solution of peptides in water, usually bacterioacidic water. And now those peptides are sensitive to degradation. And things that will degrade it pretty much immediately would be very hot temperatures, even light, which is why some companies that actually give us shit about your results will put them in amber colored bottles because they're aware of even the light, the UV degradation of peptides. So you got to keep them in the fridge. AOD usually in the fridge, 20, 30 days. That's the best use date. And most compounding pharmacies, the best use date is what they have to put. Most people can still probably get away with getting some efficacy, but there is some amount of degradation that the tricky part is it's unknown. So this is why usually they give you a 20-day supply in a bottle and that's it. And you keep the rest of the bottles lyophilized. But why deal with all that when you have freaking oral troches? Guess what? Oral troches are completely stable. And that's awesome because when they're stable, you don't have to worry about the breakdown, the loss, the concern. We recommend to our patients keeping the oral troches in the fridge just because it pops easier out. And I'll show you guys in a second what they look like, but they're kept better in the fridge to pop out of the container, but they are very stable room temperature, which makes them so much easier. Okay, so we've all seen bottles like this. There we go. So the amber color is like I talked about, but right now it's in a lyophilized powder. Bottle's not capped. So what I'm going to eventually do for this is draw bacterioacidic water, the right amount, pop in the bottle. Now it's reconstituted and I got to store it in the fridge. And I got to inject myself every single day. Yes, a subcutaneous injection is significantly easier, into the fat tissue than muscle, but it's still a pain in the butt and you still get scar tissue over time. This is why you need to reach out to us if you like, if you want to incorporate AOD. Because look how easy this is, guys. So you have this container here, you pop it out. Pop it into your buccal mucosa, and that's it. And it just sits there and tastes great. And it'll dissolve in about 20 minutes. I'm not even thinking about it. And my body, because I'm fasting right now, will mobilize the body fat stores. I wanted to touch on traveling with your peptides. So AOD or not, when you're traveling with peptides that have already been reconstituted, they are in solution. We talked about how sensitive they are to degradation, and they have varying levels of sensitivity. So you can get these packs from Amazon where it's a pack where you can put your needles, you can put your medications that are already reconstituted, and you put your needles, and an ice pack too as well. I strongly recommend you do that, and you're very cognizant. Truthfully, if you're traveling for a couple days, to protect the bottle, I would draw a couple needles for 2 or 3 days worth, take it with you in that container with the ice pack. That way you protect the bottle and the bottle stays cold just in case one overnight you forget to put it in the fridge when you get to your hotel. But again, this is why I love these bad boys. You could pop this in your pack, no issue at all. This is stable, room temperature. Why would you even go with injections? I don't know why you would. Probably because you don't know about these. Well, now you do. I wanted to also touch on the future, what's in front of us, the future of AOD. A lot of that's to be determined. We mentioned that the FDA is banning these, and so I think the future specifically of AOD is it's going to be gone. But I will always be researching other options. And so currently right now you can use CJC 1295 ipamorelin, which is our growth hormone secreting peptides. So the combination of both will actually release growth hormone, and we talked about that earlier, but those are also on the same list of AOD. So I think those are going to be gone at the same time. Which peptide I'm looking at right now as a replacer is MOTC. And so I'll do future videos talking about MOTC. But it's a different peptide, but some of that effect is going to end up with better mobilization of body fat. Specifically, MOTC it actually does so much more. MOTC is wild. It literally, I mean, it looks like it repairs the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse inside of every single cell. We have trillions of cells in our body, and we have thousands of mitochondria in each cell. So you do the math on that. Each mitochondria is like a battery where literal energy is made. And so we know that the mitochondria, the ATP production, that energy chain decreases as we age. And so MOTC, it looks like it goes in there and repairs that, right? Which you can see how that might, at least observationally, improve our ability to mobilize fat, improve many aspects of our health, which are probably going to be supportive towards sustainable weight loss. So we'll keep you guys posted, in the loop. If that's something that we can incorporate, as always, you guys can get the latest and greatest from us. So we'll see you later.